Hey all, here at OS Reviews. Today we're taking a quick look at the Fi Pro F16 Plus. Although this looks like a very generic, almost derivative design from afar, it actually has one of the most complete software experiences I've seen yet out of a budget $30 smartwatch. For one, it has a pretty large 1.67-inch display, but it also has a built-in microphone and speaker, which allows you to even answer phone calls when you are connected to your iOS or Android device, like a Bluetooth headset. It also allows you to measure the typical heart rate, SpO2, even your blood pressure is estimated here as well. Because of that built-in microphone, you can also trigger voice commands, such as using Siri if you are paired to an iPhone, even though the watch itself doesn't have any cellular connectivity. And it also doesn't have built-in GPS, but that's pretty expected here. Although again, if you are connected to a phone with GPS, you can still track your route that way. IP67 in terms of water resistance to rain and splashes, but not quite good enough for going diving. On the inside, we'll find, of course, the smartwatch itself that we'll be taking a closer look at in a moment, along with just a quick user guide and also a charging cable, which is magnetic, just sticks onto the back, takes about an hour to top up, and the battery life of these budget smartwatches have always been pretty good because the operating system is more limited, typically get you around a week, if not 10 days of usage before you need to recharge it again, which is also quite good. Now again, taking a closer look at the design of this smartwatch, I have to say it looks more expensive than the price would imply, even though it's nothing spectacular or too different from what we've seen on other products. It does have a good construction because of the aluminum alloy shell that is very polished and shiny. On the side here, we also find the speaker as well as the microphone. The other side houses just a power key. The crown key is also tactile and made out of metal. The watch straps, of course, are pretty easy to replace just by slotting them out if you want to change the texture or color yourself. The back here, though, is made out of a plastic and houses, again, the charging contacts as well as the sensors for blood oxygen and also heart rate. Turning it on in terms of the functionality, again, that's really the main selling point here, is just the extent of how the UI has been customized to give you just a few more options than what we typically see on a budget smartwatch. But the first thing that really stands out has to be the display, because even though it's not a true OLED screen, very vibrant and contrasty. Everything just pops out due to the brightness levels, and it really is a joy to see. The screen here slightly curves off in terms of the surface. It's 2.5D, which also makes swipes and interactions feel pretty smooth and responsive. As far as the, again, UI here, we can swipe down to access some quick shortcuts, jump into settings, and even change, again, the aforementioned QR code that you can store. So whether that's going to be a wallet code, and afterwards you can just scan the face of the watch whenever you're trying to pay someone. And same thing goes with social card, making it easier for others to add you, which is actually a pretty neat idea. So for instance, again, if you're using Messenger, Facebook, WhatsApp, you can just show your profile info, especially if you're maybe meeting classmates for the first time, you're a student, or even going to a company for the first time. You can just have this info on your wrist, which is saved onto this portion of the watch. So pretty neat idea. You can also jump into the voice assistant. So it's not quite as well integrated as Alexa, for instance, on maybe Google products or Android products, but it still is a nice feature. And you can also then take a look at customizing even how the layout of the different apps are displayed on the main menu. So for instance, if we now jump into that main menu, right now you can see it's being shown as this list of full apps, which, by the way, scrolling actually feels quite smooth and responsive, as you can see there. But I can also tap twice on the crown key here to change between some of those modes. This one here is a little bit more inspired by something like an Apple Watch, but again, only for 30 bucks, you're still getting a lot of features and very good build quality, surprisingly. Of course, again, with this large display, you can still tell that there's a little bit of a larger chen at the bottom there because it is a IPS LCD as opposed to OLED, but takeaways being that it does feel surprisingly snappy and responsive in terms of navigation, even with these more fancy UI tricks that they've baked in. So the processor here has probably also been slightly improved compared to other budget smartwatches. Maybe the most practical one would still be this traditional menu though, which is labeled with all the icons, can be a little easier to reference at a quick glance. Swipe up to take a look at notifications, messages which you've missed, and as far as the main watch face here, of course, we can long hold. It's able to hold up to 5 of these watch faces at a time, and afterwards, if you store more, which you can download from the companion app, it's just going to push over the final one that you've saved. But still gives you a pretty good selection even here by default. For instance, here's another more analog style. All of them look very good, I have to say, with the colorfulness of the screen here. The vibrancy really does quite pop for a IPS panel and shows off the colors quite well. Here's another more classic or professional edition look if you want to go with something a bit more classy, especially with kind of the polished metal frame here. It does look like a much more expensive watch than it really is. Swipe over from the edge here to bring over this quick shortcut drawer that can show you your weather info. From the app, you can change degrees between Fahrenheit and Celsius. You can also take a look at launching into making a phone call. Just bring up the dialer pad here and you're able to tap along to make that call. And these shortcuts will dynamically change depending on what app you've just opened. So it just gives you the 4 most recent ones that you've checked out. Otherwise, if we swipe over to the right, that will loop into the carousel of different widgets. So this includes taking a look at your steps during the past 24 hours, converted to distance, your heart rate, blood pressure, which is more of a manual measurement. And using this, it will also give you an estimation. It's not quite as accurate as a true blood pressure monitor with a cuff design, but rather uses the optical heart rate sensor and then gives you an approximation using the algorithm, but still nice to have. Perhaps most interestingly, if you swipe over again, you will be able to add more components or widgets. So like I said, this is completely customizable from the watch itself, not something we often see. So for instance, sleep tracking, telling you how many hours you slept during the previous evening, deep versus light sleep. One thing I will say though is, like most other budget smartwatches, the accuracy of sleep tracking is only so-so. It works fine if you're sleeping at the regular hours at night, but if you're taking a nap, for instance, during noon, it's not going to track that as sleep. But overall, still, you don't have to press anything, it just does that automatically, which is nice to have as a glance. You can also control the music being played back from your phone once you are paired. There's a bit of a meditation app here, which will allow you to breathe in and breathe out. Otherwise, jumping into the full list of apps as aforementioned, you can also take a look at your recent calls, and other things that we can check out just include some of those aforementioned sports and health tracking modes with a little bit more specificity, a basic stopwatch, along with a flashlight that just turns the entire screen into this white color to illuminate subjects which are close during the nighttime hours. You can also find your device. If you are linked using Bluetooth, your phone will then start to ring to remind you of where it is, although again, you are limited by that Bluetooth distance. As far as some of those sports modes are concerned, again, you do have just those basic activities like basketball, cycling, yoga, walking, running, and all of these, again, work pretty much as you would expect. After you open it up, it will just continuously measure your heart rate during the entire activity to get you more of that second-to-second continuous interval. So overall, there's definitely a lot of features on here which you have the ability to explore and check out, and for the most part, everything works pretty well in terms of the fluidity. You can even change kind of the alarms on here, set it up so that it will ring. It has haptics, but again, does have a real speaker that can be used for alarms as well. So the companion app here, which is called VFit, is also relatively straightforward, but at least it will save all of your data, including step count, calories burned in the past day when you are syncing things over, and you're able to see moments in time when you were most active. Same thing goes with sleep. You can also check out a more complete map over here. In terms of blood pressure, it also tells you if your range is kind of in the normal or if you're in the hypertension or low blood pressure zones, as well as things like resting and maximum heart rate during the day. As far as the accuracy of the sensors on here, I would say the pedometer is fairly good. If you try to shake the watch, it really doesn't count it as a real step. You have to be pretty much physically moving for it to count it, and you can further increase the accuracy there just by entering your height and weight, and it will try and calibrate the sensitivity automatically. It was pretty close to some other Amazfit watches that I compared it with. Same thing goes with heart rate. I think that this metric for the most part was pretty good compared to other models that I've tried recently. And other things that we can track here include starting a sports run from the Movements tab. This will again use the GPS from your phone to also track your route, which is also pretty neat. Under the Equipment tab, you can find more settings, such as the battery status of your device. Check out more watch dials that you can download, and there's actually quite a good selection that they provide on here. Otherwise, we can also create your own custom watch dial if you prefer, just by setting something, for instance, like your own background wallpaper as the photo, as well as change things like the text color. All of this can be further tweaked. Additional settings allow you to answer calls from the Bluetooth dial mode, as well as check out what notifications you want to pass through from your phone to the watch, and also again change things like alarms, whether you want it to remind you if you've been sitting down for too long, and types of music that you can control from that remote functionality. Things like drinking water every X hours or minutes can also be tweaked, and even a SOS mode, which is something that is, again, it's not something I've really seen before. So after entering the emergency contact's phone number, once you are paired and you hit on that SOS button, it will then make that call over on the phone, for instance 911 or a close family or friend, which is a very good safety feature, I have to say. I hope to see in more of these smartwatches. And to trigger that SOS mode, all you need to do is long hold on the crown key for a few seconds and then just swipe over here for SOS, and that will make that call. So that's more or less it as far as our quick hands-on review of the FI Pro F16, and overall I do think that this is one of the best budget smartwatches that I've seen yet for only $30. Primarily it's helped by this beautiful display, very bright and full of detail. It also has a very solid build with the metal frame, which is very much polished and rounded off, plus the abundance of software tricks that just make it feel a little bit more smart. You can check out more details if interested in the links below. For now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews.